I've been doing what people now call thought leadership for a long time. And if I'm honest, I've never been completely comfortable with being a thought leader. But I guess it still beats being an influencer. Anyway, over the years, I've been the face. Lots of air quotes in this one. I'll stop that. Over the years, I've been the face of a few marketing services companies. And in one year that stands out, I did 52 speaking gigs in 6 months. And that's before you count all the writing and the thinking and everything else that went into those. And I had one rule. Well, there were a few rules. But when it came to content, there was one absolute. Never sell the product. If people wanted a sales pitch, they knew where to find one. Conferences are for ideas, not for pitches. My belief was simple. Give the audience genuinely useful insight, and they will seek out my brand, all by themselves. And the data, that still backs that up. Back then, I believed thought leadership meant, well, exactly that, leading. Our audiences had real problems. The most common one could be summed up by that senior management mantra. I'm sure you've all heard it before. It's on the email. How hard could it be? Our job was to help them reframe the problem in a way that actually resonated within their organizations. We were not just producing content. We were changing how people thought. That version of thought leadership feels as rare as, well, hen's teeth today. Too much of what is labeled thought leadership now is just AI slop chasing likes on LinkedIn. And if your thought leadership is not leading, you're performing. You're chasing applause. Let's skip to the point. So what is thought leadership really? In the real world, thought leadership does one job. It changes how a buyer sees a problem. It improves decision quality by introducing new evidence, clearer trade-offs, better choices. Most importantly, it makes doing nothing the critically reasoned decision rather than the lazy choice. That is very different from what usually passes as thought leadership on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, thought leadership is often reductive. It's content engineered for distribution with hooks, hot takes, and virtue signaling. We must remember that LinkedIn is a social media platform first. It's programmed to produce and thrives on endorphins. And because of that, it incentivizes what's easy to measure: impressions, reactions, comments, shares. Now, they're not bad. They're useful process metrics, but they are not evidence of thought leadership. They're vanity metrics, numbers that tend to go up, look impressive, but tell you very little about whether anyone's thinking has actually changed. And there are three reasons vanity metrics consistently lead marketers to make the wrong choices. First is the consumption paradox. According to Edelman's research with, oddly, LinkedIn, around half of decision makers and C-suite leaders say they spend more than an hour a week consuming thought leadership. Yet only a small minority of that group rate most of what they read as very good or excellent. Now, on the surface, that looks really damning. People spend hours reading content that they think is meh. Personally, I don't buy into that interpretation. What I think is this really shows aspiration rather than behavior. Senior leaders believe they should be consuming thought leadership, so they report that they are. In other words, observation bias. But consuming can mean many things. It can mean reading carefully. It can also mean downloading something with every intention of reading it carefully, but never quite getting there. And the real problem is this. Decision makers know you produce something, and maybe the blurb caught their eye, but they often cannot remember who said what, or, more importantly, why it mattered. The result? Lots of unqualified leads and very little influence. Secondly, trust is not earned by like. That same research shows that most decision makers trust thought leadership more than the sales or marketing content when assessing a company's capabilities. Now, that should be good news. But here's the irony. Thought leadership is frequently a marketing activity, and it's always colored by the brand behind it. For example, a few years ago, omnichannel was a wildly popular buzzword, and I railed against it. I still rail against it, on stage, repeatedly, all the time. Omni means all. Omnipotent, all-powerful. Omniscient, all-knowing. So omnichannel must mean all channels. When was the last time you briefed an agency on a fax or skywriting campaign? Exactly. What I did not realize at the time, however, was that our product team was very busy building our omni-channel solution. That experience taught me something very important. Thought leadership never exists in a vacuum. The brand always bleeds through. If your thought leadership, though, looks like marketing in a trench coat, you're going to burn the credibility advantage that you're trying to earn. And number 3, engagement is not impact. Don't get me wrong, I chase likes too. In fact, pause for a second. Go like this video. Go ahead, I'll wait. But tying likes to real business outcomes is extraordinarily difficult. Even if you could, what portion of a sale would you attribute to a reaction button? And this is where marketers get themselves into trouble by obsessing over rates rather than numbers. Rates are easy to manipulate and very easy to celebrate, but real outcomes are from real people doing real things. Likes are not loyalty, comments are not conviction, impressions are not influence. The Edelman LinkedIn data also shows that genuinely good thought leadership can change buying behavior. 3/4 of decision makers say a piece of thought leadership has led them to research a product or solution that they had not previously considered. That does not mean they clicked on the landing page. It means the content triggered a, wow, I should really look at this moment for that reader. From there, the downstream impact is significant. Many of those buyers go on to work with the organization that produced the content. Many say they are willing to pay a premium to work with those companies. And a large majority say consistent high-quality thought leadership makes them more likely to invite a company into an RFP process. So, thought leadership can drive revenue, but only when it actually leads. Now, layer in what we know about buying behavior. Buyers say their buying journey lasts around 12 months. Sales data suggests the active sales cycle is closer to 4, but most buyers say they are already 2/3 of the way through their decision before they ever speak to sales. So those two things match up quite well. In fact, the majority of buyers have already chosen a preferred supplier before they even talk to sales. So what sales teams often think of as a buying journey is really buying theater. The process exists for the buyer to confirm a decision, satisfy procurement and finance, justify the choice internally, and defend it later if necessary. Thought leadership has to do its work before that stage, before sales gets involved. Now at this point, some of you are thinking, yeah, but Skip, visibility still matters. And you're right, it does. And I'm not saying ignore LinkedIn. Thought leadership must be seen to work. At the top of the funnel, process metrics are useful. In the middle of the funnel, quality matters. Are you reaching the right personas in the right companies? And at the bottom of the funnel, thought leadership should help you close. And at that point, it should absolutely be tied to revenue. Others will say, thought leadership influences buying, so we should do more of it. And the data supports that, but only when the quality is high. The answer is not more content, it is better content. And finally, some of you will argue that not everything needs to be tied to pipeline. And I agree, sort of. But thought leadership is a brand signal. It demonstrates competence, credibility, and worldview, especially in complex and high trust categories. But if your thought leadership only works at the top of the funnel, it's a very, very expensive brand tactic. Now, I'm a bit of a stickler on this point. Thought leadership should be about leading, not about chasing applause. LinkedIn can sometimes feel like, well, fur coat, no knickers. In other words, all show, no substance. Your thought leadership should be doing 3 things. First and foremost, it should be reframing the problem. Secondly, it should work through the entire sales funnel. And lastly, it should drive genuine business outcomes. In other words, revenue. If your thought leadership can be outsourced to a prompt, it's not thought leadership, it's formatting. So I'd love to know your take. And if you disagree, even better. Feel free to DM me, like, and leave a comment below. Encouragement, advice, topic ideas are always welcome. And if you like this episode, follow and share. Join me next time when I'll cut through more B2B buzzwords. Until then, stay safe, make good choices, and keep skipping to the point.